Hey guys, Technicosm here. This is a video that I wasn't actually expecting to make because I only actually recently did this, but I definitely think it's something I want to make a video on, even though it's probably going to be quite a bit shorter. But honestly, the only reason I wouldn't have made a video on this is because I thought it'd probably be too short, but then I'm always surprised by how long my videos are, so I think this won't be too short. I think this should be just about long enough. Anyway, what we're actually looking at right here is Eerie, the 5th track for Avian Omens. I'm not really going to show much, I'm afraid, but I am going to show you this little drum pattern I have. Basically, I managed to create a snare that I think is both very effective and very unique. And I'm pretty frustrated that it's now decided to auto-save before I was about to play it. Okay, right, there we go. Oh my... okay, there we go. Okay, right, you're gonna do that, are you? You're completely fine before, but now... Right, switch smart disable. You know what, I just realised, what am I doing? I actually exported this earlier, so... Oh, wow. Don't look at that. Nah, anyway, I don't know why I'm bothering with this, because I exported this earlier. Did I put it in here, or did I put it in here? Right, okay, so... This is what it sounds like. The only thing I've changed is, in the version you're about to hear, the effect is a little bit less intense, but it's a very subtle difference, so overall this is basically the sound, but without the lag. Just gotta wait for Groove to take a million years as always. I hate this. And I'm sorry, I'm still going over a cold. Right, so there it is, that's the sound. How have I gone about making this? Well, this is it. Yeah, okay, right. So, I'm surprised because I know that the reason why it's lagging now and it wasn't lagging before is probably because of OBS, but I'm just surprised because usually... and I suppose this is surprising in itself, but usually OBS doesn't actually cause FL Studio to lag more. Well, it does, but not a noticeable amount, so I'm surprised it's making it lag this much more. Is that the hat zip point? Man, it really is struggling. Maybe like that. Right, okay, there's no way it's not going to lag, that's great. Well, never mind, you're going to have to deal with that, I'm afraid. So yeah. So, this snare right here starts out as a snare that you can get for free. If you just look at free dubstep snares, the Ghost Hack free dubstep snares pack. Where have I put it? Oh yeah, it's in the trash because I never organised this. There, snare 3 in that pack. It's that snare. This also has this _2 here. The only reason that's there is because I use these snares a lot, and a lot of these snares have a lot of silence after them, like just left in the sample. I basically put at one point put all these snares into Edison and re-edited them and cut them down so they were as short as possible without removing any of the sound. So yeah, this is basically exactly the same as you will have it when you get it in, well, when you download the pack, but if there is a small difference here, then it will have only been because maybe I've cut off a teeny bit of tail with Edison, because I do prefer these to be a bit more tight. So yeah, it's snare 3, and that's, so it starts out as snare 3. It will sound a little bit, if I turn off all the effects for a moment, it's still going to sound probably a little bit more powerful than usual, because first of all, the volume is obviously being increased here, but second of all, because it's going through compression, not in this track, but it sends it to a bus for to this track for compression for the drums, and then it sends it to the master, where the master compresses everything as well. So yeah, it's going to be compressed a little bit. Actually, just a moment, I forgot, I layered it with a more normal snare. I'm afraid this one you might not be able to get, because this one is one that just one that my friend made, because when he first tried making some drums synthetically, and that's it. Well, actually, just a moment, that's what it sounds like. It's pretty good, actually. But yeah, so I guess I can't help you there, but yeah, that's obviously not the snare we're looking at today, so I'm going to turn that off for a second, so it's just the kick and this. So yeah, that's what it sounds like with no effects. So then I decided to add a resonator. Now I'm afraid this is something you might not have, but don't worry, this isn't the most important thing here, so you can still try and make this kind of sound with just FL effects. But what this does, well, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know all the details of what a resonator does, because I very rarely use these things, but generally I'm using these to I just realised this isn't the right pitch. I'll see what it sounds like at the right pitch, and if it sounds weird, I'll put it back to how it was before. C5. It's supposed to be C, not C sharp. I'm so used to doing it in C sharp minor. So yeah, basically, what this is going to do is it's going to exaggerate the kind of power of frequencies that the C5 notes frequency, the bass tone of it, is going to increase the volume of like that kind of frequency. It's not well, it does something kind of more than that, but basically it makes them more intense. And then, as well as that, you can either have it do the same to all the frequencies above in a descending kind of manner, either in a saw series or a square series. So basically, you can have it happen to every harmonic of that frequency that you select here, or you can have it happen to every odd harmonic if you select the square option, because saw wave is every single harmonic and in a descending volume, and square wave is the same, but you take out all the even harmonics. So yeah, so that means that when I turn this on. Oh wow, I knew it was subtle, but that's even more subtle than I thought. So yeah, this is not very audible, because I mostly just wanted this on the impact. So I have it so that basically this is being used as side chaining, this option right here, and this is basically doing the opposite of side chaining, where with side chaining you would make things quieter when the drums hit, because this is literally part of the drum, so we'd actually want it to be louder when the drums hit. This is turning on as the drums hit. If this was on all the time, it would sound like this. Just a minute. Huh. Okay. When I was using this thing earlier, it was very, very noticeable, the effect. But I guess just not anymore. Well, whatever. As I say, that's not the most important effect anyway. So, then there's a stereo enhancer. This is just a small little thing I'm doing, because when this stereo separation knob is the only thing I'm using here. I'm not panning it to the left or right. What I'm doing is, when you put this knob closer to the minus, it makes it sound like the sound is coming more from the center, and when it's closer to the plus, it sounds more like the sound is all around you and separated out. So what I wanted is, you usually don't want your snares to be very separated out, because they need to kind of, hit hard, and if they kind of feel like they're all around you, then it's probably going to be less kind of impactful, like less solid sounding, and more kind of, I don't know, warbly or something. So yeah, so I have the snare itself be very kind of merged, as it's called. It's very merged, it's very close to the center. But the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to also have a reverb that's very spread out. So basically the initial hit is all in the middle, and then the reverb is all around you, and none in the middle. Anyway, then there's Fruity Delay 3. This is the main thing that's making this sound the way it does. And if I turn off the dry, so as you can see, this time knob, it looks a little bit weirder than it probably does for you normally. If I open up another Fruit Delay 3, I'm pretty sure I can switch the knob without it breaking it, but I don't want to take that chance. Basically, as you can see, usually it's like this. And usually the delay time is in beats, not milliseconds. However, if you turn this like that, you can switch to milliseconds mode. Now, this is actually the first time I've ever used this, because personally I find it almost always better to do it in beats. But in this scenario, I wanted a very, very quick delay. I wanted a very quick echo. This is the lowest option I could have, which was still pretty quick. But in this case, this is the first time where I'm like, that's not quick enough. I need it to be even quicker. So let me make it into milliseconds. But yeah, it looks like it probably wouldn't exactly work if I turn this off, because 3 beats isn't necessarily 13.8 milliseconds, at least I don't think so. I'm pretty sure I can change the tempo and it won't break anything, because I should be able to just change it back, but I'm not taking any chances. So yeah, let me get rid of this Fruit Delay 3 now. And go back to the one that's actually doing something. So yeah, so there was a 3.3 millisecond delay. This kept getting adjusted. Originally it was like 1 millisecond, and then I kind of kept making it thinking, okay, maybe I can let it be a bit longer. Maybe a little bit longer will be fine, and that's kind of how it went. Until eventually I thought 3.3 milliseconds was actually fine. Same kind of thing with the time modulation. Originally this was a really low setting. I think it was 1%, and then it was like 3%, and then 5%, and then 10%. Time modulation in this context, you can basically think of it as detune. Essentially what it's doing is they've got a sine wave as an LFO, and you're setting the frequency of that sine wave here, which by default is 1.1 Hz. So every second it will have oscillated 1 time in a tenth. So yeah, and basically you can think of this as detune, because essentially when that sine wave goes up, it's making it so that the same sound is being played faster, and when it goes down, it's the same sound is being played slower. But when you play it faster and slower, unless you use granular synthesis magic to change things, you are also changing the pitch as well as the time it takes. So, and this does not use granular synthesis magic to clean it up and make it all the same pitch. So basically, you use that time knob as a detune kind of knob. So yeah, this is basically saying these echoes are going to be that detuned. Over here, again, if you're not very familiar with Fruit Delay 3, basically this level right here is you saying how much volume of the last echo do you want to pass on to this next one. So the original sound, the first echo is 75% of the original sound's volume, because this is at 75%, and the next one will be 75% of that, and 75% of that, and 75% of that, and 75% of that. I mentioned there was a subtle difference earlier between the recorded version and the version in the what I'm showing you right now. That difference is that the feedback level used to be 66.7, and now it's 75. I just turned it up a little bit because basically I thought this effect was really cool, but I was thinking that it could kind of detract from the snare and make it sound more like a sound effect than a snare. So I kept it on lower settings. But honestly, I actually think this sound effect works very, very... Let's say this effect. I think it works really well with the snare, and it doesn't kind of weaken it. I suppose is what I'm going for, because there are a lot of ways you can have cool effects like this, but they can make the snare weak. I don't think this is one of them. Anyway, so as well as that, we have we also have a high pass being placed on each echo, with the feedback cut off at as close to 260 Hz as I could get. The reason why 260 specifically is because this snare is very pitched. Essentially, usually you kind of think of drums as things that you don't pitch, and in traditional music, of course, that's kind of true. But in electronic music, it's not that uncommon for you to make snares sound way better by actually pitching them to the key of your track. So this track is in C natural minor, I think. It's either C natural or C harmonic. I don't remember off the top of my head right now. C minor. And because of that, the root note of the scale is C. So I want this drum to be pitched to the note C. And 260 hertz, I believe, is the pitch of C4, so 1 octave down from middle C. So basically, that means that because we also have some resonance on this high pass, and again the resonance will increase with each echo, that means it puts emphasis on these frequencies that are close to where the note is, because again, I'm pretty sure that you probably will know at this point, but in case any of you don't know, what resonance does with filters like this is it increases the volume of the sound where the cut-off point is just before it gets cut off. So basically, these lower if we think of this knob as this area as low frequencies, this is high frequencies, this is mid frequencies, we're saying all these low frequencies get cut off, except this little bit right here we're going to make a lot louder because of the resonance, and then everything else we keep. And then with each echo, this knob kind of moves further and further towards the top until all the frequencies are gone. But with each echo, the resonance also kind of increases, even though the point where the resonance would move as the cutoff goes up. So yeah. Then I am doing the main thing that's kind of making this sound all cool. If I just, to demonstrate how much different it sounds without it, let me just turn it off for a second. So that's still a kind of cool and a unique sound, but it's definitely lacking its character and without me doing this. So, what is this? This is a form of bit crushing called sample rate reduction, and I think personally this is the best way to bit crush. Obviously, well, the best way to bit crush is to use a combination of different methods, but obviously, like, if you can only use one of those things, I would recommend sample rate reduction, because it has a very interesting kind of sound. So basically, if you don't know what sample rate is, sample rate is the amount of times your computer or FL Studio or whatever checks what volume you're outputting, because you got to remember that pitch does not exist in one moment of time, because pitch is a measurement of how many times a second your volume changes. If you're just looking at one point in time, there is no such thing as pitch. The only thing there is volume at that point. And then later, as it records multiple different volumes in a certain amount of time, then you have a pitch, like across all those different recordings of volumes. But if you only have one recording of volume, that doesn't have a pitch. Well, it has a pitch of 0 hertz. It's not changing at all, so it's oscillating 0 times a second. So yeah, basically, your sample rate, as I say, is how many times the computer checks what volume you're putting out. And typically, the sample rate, by default in FL Studio and in most programs, is something like 44,000 hertz. Because for you to be able to accurately record an oscillation of a sound wave, you would have to be able to record it when it goes up and when it goes down before it starts over again. So, because that's 2 recordings you would have to make of the same wave before it starts over again, that means that any sound that is has a higher frequency than half of your sample rate, you will start to inaccurately record the volumes of, and you will start to actually change the way that sound is. It will start to sound different to how it should be, because of the fact it's going above Nyquist, as it's called, that frequency range. It's going above half of your sample rate. So the reason why 44,000 hertz is the usual sample rate for most of these kind of things is because most humans can't hear much past 20,000 hertz. Of course, there's a bit of room for error, which is why they add the extra 2,000 hertz. But with the normal sample rate, the point at which they stop recording accurately is the point at which we wouldn't be able to hear those frequencies anyway. So, you know, no problem. Except those frequencies, just because we can't hear them doesn't mean they can't interact with frequencies we already have in our project, lower ones we can hear, in ways that seem weird. That's what anti-aliasing is. If you heard about that before, that's basically when certain plugins have ways of removing the effects of frequencies that can't be heard, that they have on frequencies that you can hear. as they go like above Nyquist. But anyway, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So basically what we're doing here is just reducing the sample rate massively. As you can see, it drops to 1050 hertz. Well, 49, but I couldn't get it closer. And that's again because 1050 hertz is C6, C an octave up, C6. So an octave up from middle C, I mean. So again, not that I think it's not super important that you get these pitched to these knobs specifically pitched to C. There's something more important that you'll have to do when pitching to them to C. But this is just a thing that I'm doing just to make it extra kind of harmonic, I guess. Harmonious? I don't know. Kind of harmonious. I mean, it's a snare. Anyway, but yeah. Now, I mentioned before that things will start to be recorded inaccurately if the frequencies they're producing are higher than Nyquist. The point at which is half of your sample rate. Well, this is where things get a bit interesting because basically the higher you make a frequency go past Nyquist, the lower the frequency output would be, which is really, really weird to think about. But if you think of it this way, imagine that you were playing a square wave that was exactly the same as your sample rate. That would mean that every single time it went to check what volume you were putting out, it would check the same part of the square wave. And because it would be checking the exact same part of the wave every single time, that means the volume would never change. Which means that you would be playing something with a frequency of 0 hertz. Which again is really, really weird to think about. But yeah, until you get to double Nyquist, in which case it starts going back up again, and I think it just infinitely goes up and down and up and down. Until you get to double Nyquist, the more you try and make something higher frequency past Nyquist, the lower frequency it becomes, because it skips oscillations, because it's going too fast for it to record them all, and it will start to record bits and not other bits. I believe if you have your sound be 1.5 times Nyquist, then you will it will actually be half the frequency of Nyquist, because it will keep, again, missing oscillations. Anyway, so because of that, you can completely change the way a sound sounds by reducing its sample rate, and you can kind of focus frequencies around a certain point. So by having the sample rate at 1060, like having it be reduced that low for this echo, that means that we cram the frequencies nearer to 560 hertz, because that's 560, 525 hertz, because that's the that's obviously the Nyquist of frequency of 1050 hertz is the sample rate, and that is C5, middle C, and every single one of these snares is pitched to middle C. So that would kind of crunch the frequencies that try to go past middle C back to around the frequency range of middle C. So that means that, again, it's going to make this snare sound more pitched and kind of just sound more nice to the ear and less messy. As well as that, we are also reducing the bit rate. I think that was... I never had a problem with this, and now bit depth, sorry. I thought that was wrong. Yeah, the bit depth. Honestly, I think this knob's a little bit deceptive. I mean, it's technically not wrong, but when people see this bits knob, they probably expect that that's the Bitcrusher knob. And technically these are both Bitcrusher knobs, but this is the thing that kind of does the kind of sound that you would think of when you think of Bitcrushing. This is doing something far more subtle and honestly far less useful in most cases, although not to say you can't use it. In fact, to be honest, me using this, I could have this turned off and it would not sound much different, but again, I just thought I'd have it on. Basically, this is how much detail the computer can record in terms of different amounts of volumes. Because if you only have one bit, that means you can only have two volumes. You can either have, if that bit is 0, and that means there is no volume, or if that bit is 1, you're at maximum volume, and there's no in between. And then once you add another bit, well, now you can have 0 volume, a third volume, 2/3 volume, and full volume. You can have something like that. You get the point. As you have more bits, you can have more variety in volume. And of course, we have enough bits in FL Studio to the point where it doesn't even sound like it's being rounded to the nearest kind of thing that a bit can represent, because the gaps are becoming so small that they basically sound like real life. But of course, we can reduce those. We can reduce the amount of bits and make those gaps wider again, so we can hear that the volume keeps getting rounded up or rounded down to a certain amount. So yeah, that's what that's doing. Anyway, that's kind of the bulk of the sound. There's only one other thing that's super important to the sound that I haven't showed you yet, which we'll get to soon. So then there's an OTT. Don't worry if you're like, oh no, I don't have this plugin. This plugin is completely free. And in fact, if you own Serum, the compressor in Serum in multiband mode is literally an OTT. So yeah, even if you can't be bothered to download this, if you have Serum effects, like as a separate plugin from Serum, you could still put it in. So yeah, essentially this is just a multiband compressor. So while these volumes are in the yellow, it makes them louder, and while they're in the green, it makes them quieter, it pushes them down. That's why this is called an upwards-downwards compressor. There's a high band, a mid band, and a low band, so for high frequencies, medium frequencies, and low frequencies. And basically what I have here is I've tweaked the knobs a little bit, but it's not super crazy. What I've done, I mainly made this time a pretty low value. Time is kind of how often it kind of updates what volume each of these bands are. And how like kind of sharply it moves. It moves more smoothly at higher settings, but it kind of means that it falls behind what's actually happening. Whereas at lower settings, it will probably be almost completely accurate to what's actually happening in terms of the volume, but it will be much more sharp and jaggedy and stuff. Anyway, so basically, the main thing is this upwards and downwards knobs. I've reduced the upward quite a bit because I wanted to make this OTT a little bit subtle, and that's not usually what OTT does. I mean, it's supposed to be over the top. Yeah, so I'm making it so that the upwards pushing volume is still there, but less drastic than usual. And I'm doing the same for the downwards, just because I find that on 100% or higher, the downwards part in OTT usually makes it sound very flat. It usually can hardly push past the downwards, the green area at all. And while I do want the green area to slow the sound gaining volume down, like kind of push it downwards, obviously, I don't want it to just be a complete brick wall where it hits it and it's like, right, I can't get any more volume. And then the last thing I did is I reduced this depth a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know exactly what this depth knob does, but from what I can hear, it sounds like it kind of makes the whole multi-band kind of, and the whole ups and downwards, it seems like almost kind of like a mix knob for the entire thing. I think it still applies the outgain and ingain, even if you turn this depth to 0, but I'm not sure if, I think it sounds like it's a mix knob for the upwards downwards part for the different bands. So, and usually I would have this on 100 if I'm using OTT, but I turned it down just a little bit for this because again I wanted this to be a relatively subtle kind of OTT. Anyway, this is the part that's super important, and just so you know, the effects that you put in, the order does matter, and I would put the OTT before this, because the OTT, by compressing things like this, adds a lot of messy frequencies to your sound, and if you added those messy frequencies before after doing this, it would completely undo the whole point of this EQ right here. So this EQ, as you can see, it's pretty aggressive. There's just a bit of a reduction on the really high frequencies, and a big boost, a big narrow boost at 500 and is it 560 or 550? I actually can't. I think it's 550 hertz. Again, trying to be around C, and a big boost at 260 hertz to see the next octave down. So yeah, and again, both of them are narrow. So this is just to kind of, again, make it sound super pitched. And as well as that, usually I would also just like to throw in, it's better when you use an EQ to make it like that. Make it so that, because basically the reason for that is, while parametric equalizer can increase the volume of your sounds, whenever parametric equalizer does increase the volume of your sounds, it usually can have some artifacts that you don't intend, just because when you increase the volume of something, it has to have a ceiling at some point. If it starts hitting the ceiling of your like loudest volumes allowed, it's going to start messing with the sound, how the sound fundamentally sounds, to try and make it work with the ceiling. So because of that, basically, do not make things go above the halfway point on an EQ unless you have to. Again, it's not a super, oh, it's going to sound terrible thing. It's just a small, it will generally sound better if instead you make it quiet and then boost the volume later. The only reason I'm not doing that here is because this is such an intense volume boost that we actually kind of intentionally want it to sound kind of distorted and almost low quality, almost. For those kind of frequencies, and as well as that, if I do reduce it like this, I have to do a lot of volume boosting to get it back to normal, and that would probably involve compression. And if I use compressors like OTT or Maximus or whatever to make the volume go back up, there's a good chance it'll undo the effect that I've just created by, you know, massively boosting this frequency range. It will kind of unpitch it because it will add extra frequencies in different places and mess it all up. But yeah, just to show you the difference, this is what it sounds like if I put the OTT after the EQ. So this is what it sounds. Sorry, this is what it sounds like before, and then after. Actually, to be fair, with the delay, it's not that noticeable, but I can hear. I'm not sure if you could, because to be fair, that did seem a bit. That was more subtle than it was before. Before, like, I made this more intense, this delay, but it was more messy with the OTT afterwards. Anyway, then there's just two fruity convolvers. To be honest, this could easily be one, but I don't know, the way I did it, it ended up being two. The first one is this one. And I'm going to turn off the drive for a second so you can hear just what the reverb without the original sound sounds like. So this is the Room Bright preset with the input and output stereo separation at 100% separated, so it's all around you again. It's the kind of concept I was explaining earlier with the stereo enhancer, where it's not in the middle, it's all around you and it's separated and all that. The cell convolution amount is 25% if I remember right. I've stretched it to as short amount of time as I can, which has also increased the pitch of it, which I also wanted because I want this to be a high reverb and a short reverb. Did I put an EQ on this? No, I didn't. And I don't usually do this, but there's 5 milliseconds of pre-delay time, and the reason for that is this sound. I kind of liked how, while with most snares you want everything to happen instantly for the maximum impact, I kind of like how this one, due to the very, very quick echoes, kind of feels like it doesn't all happen, like it happens and then there's a little bit of extra afterwards before we get into the reverb. I actually kind of like that. So I wanted to delay the reverb so that it would happen just after the first echo, which would obviously be the strongest one, and it kind of almost adds like a really quick kind of arpeggio sound to it. Like, that's a good example, that particular. Oh my god, that was so bad. I can't do impressions of the snares, but yeah, you can kind of hear there was an initial hit and then there was the metallic ring afterwards. It wasn't instant; it came just after the initial hit, and then of course the reverb came afterwards. On top of that, and I even though it's all in a very short space of time, so it's not very noticeable. I think that makes it sound quite nice. Wait, did I turn this on or is that on by default? I guess that's on by default, I didn't even notice that. The second convolver is a longer reverb. This one's being sidechained, as you can tell, from that ring. So this is the Cellar preset with it being stretched just a little bit, 125%, to reduce the pitch and make it longer. Again, self-convolution 25%. Again, input and wet stereo separation 100%. And this is the one I put the EQ on. Exaggerating C3, C5, C6, C7, and then it drops off. And yeah, well, that's basically it. Oh yeah, and the mix of the EQ is on 67%, just because this was a little bit aggressive, so I made the EQ not fully mixed in. So that's how I made this snare, which I'm pretty satisfied with. I think it sounds pretty unique and pretty effective. And again, I think most of the only problems with this snare is just not kind of having is that you might want something that's a bit more dirty or something with a bit more low end. But I mean, if you want that, all you have to do is layer it with a pretty normal snare, dubstep kind of snare like I did here, and you kind of got your bases covered. So yeah, hope you learned something from this video, and I hope you like that snare, because I'm pretty happy with it. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.